Oh, hi there. I was just editing one of my podcasts here. I'm Dylan James Weaver, but you can call me Dylan, and this is the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. Hey, let's see how this thing sounds. Hold in! Okay, so it needs a little more work, but that's the exciting part, because you never know what you'll discover along the way. Oh, don't take my word for it, though. You can find out for yourself when you listen to today's Wad Fam Chalk Pod. Hello and welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. I'm Dylan Weaver.
And I'm Andrew Sabo.
And we're here this week to talk about episode 47 of Adventures in Odyssey, A Single Vote.
This one is, for not owning Heroes as the album, a surprising number of these episodes are burned into my subconscious, because just reading the title last week, I knew exactly what this episode was going to be like.
Oh yeah. There are lines and things from this that have, permeated deep inside me. Stuff that I even have quoted on this show previously, with speech at the end, I think I bring up from time to time. It's a lot.
It is a lot, but I'm excited to talk about it because there's a whole lot of... This is a strange episode of Adventures in Odyssey, I feel like. Like, in the sense that it does have all, the typical cast of characters and stuff. There aren't a lot that really take this angle.
Sure. It's an episode written and directed by Phil Lawler.
That tracks.
And it first aired November 5th of 1988, which was 3 days before Election Day, 1988.
Was that an election year?
Correct. That
Okay.
would be a major election year. Wait. No, it would not. No, it would have
been. It would have been an election year because it would have been 80.
Oh, 88 to 2008. Yeah, we're good. I did 88 to 2018 for some reason. Was like, no, it wasn't. But that's not how 20 years work. Yeah, no, it is not. So yes, it was a major election year. I don't know who we elected that year, but it was someone.
Somebody.
They made an episode about it. And yeah, what an episode it is.
Well, and this was during this time. If it came out in 88, like this would have been pretty much during the peak evangelical involvement in government.
You don't think current is the peak, Andrew?
No, certainly not. At least I hope not. If it is, we didn't make the changes we needed to. But based on my limited understanding, it was it was the late 70s to late 80s when Christians kind of went from being on the sidelines and having their faith be the center of their life and, participating in politics passively to being like, no, it's our faith. And so therefore they must be our politics. So, fun times. Well, we will get into it.
Oh, we for sure will. Other things to note. I mean, cast wise, it's just kind of a classic cast. We have Chad Reiser playing Horace Higginbotham, which is just like classic actor. We get to play kids in this area, plays a kid in this era. And then we've got our Hal Smith, Katie Lee, Walker Edmonston, Will Ryan filling in a million roles throughout the episode. And then, hey, we just grab in random people from the staff to fill out the other ones. Your Bob Luttrell's, Dave Arnold's, Chuck Bolte's, Steve Harris's, Phil Lawler's, Paul McCusker. It's like everyone pops in at least for a little bit because this episode is just chock full of characters.
Yeah, because it's a history episode.
It is.
With our resident historian Dylan Weaver.
We have, I don't know if we've talked about this publicly on the podcast, but at least behind closed doors, Andrew and I have discussed, like, we've really shied away from the history episodes because of the amount of legwork I feel like I would need to do to be able to cover them well.
Yeah.
This episode, I did a lot of legwork.
I believe it. There are 3 separate events, very long, yeah, 3 separate events across a period of history that doesn't have a ton of documentation.
Yeah, I did what I could to cover this. And actually, maybe, I don't know. How do we want to do this? Do we want to hit the history as it comes? Do we want history up top? What makes sense?
Oh,
because they all tie so tightly with each other in the episode.
Yeah, a part of me
I
thinks that we should
like...
do episode then history, but maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
keep them waiting. You want to know what actually happened? Stick around.
That's probably the best way to cover it. You know what? I'm gonna agree with Andrew here.
Wow.
Okay, it's a first time for everything.
Yeah, we're really on unknown territory.
So with that in mind, then I guess you just want to roll the promo and then we get into the discussion.
More than anything.
Cool. Well then, here is the promo.
On the next adventure in Odyssey.
When you come right down to it, one vote really doesn't make any difference.
Well, I can see you've never heard the story of Jameson Shoemaker.
Connie learns the power of a single vote.
I send greetings to you in Texas, the 28th and newest state in the Union.
That's next time on Adventures in Odyssey.
Hot dog.
Mm-hmm.
Texas becoming a state in the Union. I wonder what percentage of Odyssey's fan base is in Texas.
Huh. I don't know. Do you think that they have a higher concentration in Texas than elsewhere? Like, I'm saying percentage of people in Texas versus people who listen to Odyssey.
No, I'm thinking like Nebraska, Oklahoma, like maybe probably not Louisiana. Maybe one of, yeah, I'm gonna say Nebraska or Oklahoma, maybe Idaho. I feel like a low population state that's largely conservative would probably have the largest percentage as far as like overall sway, which I think maybe is the point of this episode. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, it's another of our early episodes that are a call to action.
So good, love it. Call to political action.
Mm-hmm.
A single vote.
But
this
not
episode's intro.
not like as opposed to some of our other ones that we've covered. Not like bad political action.
No, certainly not. And that's
like it's neutral political action, or I mean, well, like it's positive political action. Like they don't put their thumb on the scale really for like, and you gotta vote for whoever was Republican in '88. I don't remember because it is a kids show.
No, they're not gonna go quite that far, but they definitely do the whole like layer it in subliminally where it's like, oh yes, I'm a Christian, so I'm gonna vote with with my faith, and these are the candidates that best represent my values, which is perfectly reasonable. Right, nothing against that.
Yeah, no, vote for who represents your values.
Sure,
that's
the point.
So we start off the episode in a wild fashion.
Yeah.
With Chris visiting DC, walking up to...
I thought she was in a cave. When she first started talking, because it's so echoey and stuff, and it sounded kind of wet, too. I was like, is Chris in a cave? And she said that she was in the Lincoln Memorial. And that was, still a bit confused.
Yep. And, she then starts up a conversation with Abraham Lincoln himself in statue form.
Who is
in
voiced
the stone.
By who?
I think it's a Bob Luttrell doing Lincoln.
Pulling it up. Yep, Bob Luttrell.
And it's it's really something.
It does exist.
Yeah.
So she freaks out, and then Lincoln says, "You'll get over it. Just roll the intro or whatever."
Right. And at one point,
Roll
it's
the
like,
theme.
it's amazing what you can do with radio these days.
Yeah.
Which is very funny.
So we get the weird intro, and then we cut back to the Chris skit where she's basically establishing that, like, it's our Christian duty to vote and stuff, which, not my favorite. I don't know, Dylan. What are your thoughts on the matter?
I
think that it's good to vote. Like, I think
Yeah.
participating in democracy is great, and I think that that's the point, and people should be active in that, but
correct.
I don't feel any part of, I won't say any part, but like, I don't feel like it's necessary to largely motivate that with my faith. Like, it's not like required of my faith to vote in the way that maybe it's kind of portrayed.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think that it's like, I think that it's good as citizens of this place who have the ability to vote to do so.
Yeah.
I think framing it as it's like a religious or a moral imperative that you vote is bad. And I think isn't the best. And I think where it starts to get really bad and I start to really have issues is like the classic, like, we are handing out a pamphlet on Sunday that tells you who to vote for in this election.
Yeah, these are their stances on hot topic issues, and this is our church's beliefs. And
Right.
yeah, that's not a good move. Highly against it.
Yeah, I think.
And like education, they're not doing anything inherently wrong by educating their, congregation, I would suggest, but it feels like an abuse of power.
Yeah, and it doesn't, like, I struggle with.
You could have that like in the foyer. You just can't hand it out. It's one of those resources.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think I really get frustrated with you believe these things, so you have to vote in these ways.
Yeah.
Because XYZ is the most important issue to us, and if you don't vote that way, you're going against God or whatever.
Well, yeah, you're going against your faith. It's taking something that is entirely human-based and being like, well, if you do it this wrong, then you're...
Right, and I'm like, there is no political candidate who is going to 100% line up with the Bible.
Nope.
And so to be like, well, this person is more in line than that person based on whatever thing I do. Like, do that on a personal level.
Yeah.
Don't do that as a whole and say, well, this person is biblically evil versus this person who is biblically good.
Yeah.
Because, no.
Are you kidding me?
We are all biblically evil.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, it's literally, and maybe this is undue pessimism, but like when it comes to politics and especially politicians and who you vote for, I feel like I'm in the back of a classroom, and I say this as somebody that was homeschooled, just throwing pencils at the ceiling and like just seeing which ones are gonna stick. And like, is my pencil necessarily any better than anybody else's? No, it's mine. I brought it from home. I was the one who sharpened it as opposed to my classmate. It doesn't matter, but like, at the end of the day, it's still a pencil, and the likelihood that it sticks and does anything actually impressive is so small,
Andrew, that's the point of this episode. To quote Chris, people these days tend to think our government and leaders are going to do what they want, whether or not they get involved. So why get involved?
That's such a hard statement to argue against because, like, obviously getting involved means a lot of different things. And, like, Protesting, very good. Democracy, great. I'm so proud to be an American, especially, compared to Russia right now, where it's like people got mad at their government, they went out into the streets, they were doing peaceful protests, and they just got, thousands of people locked up, just for voicing their opinion. Like, that's something that I'm incredibly blessed to be a part of. But at the same time, it's also such a weapon and manipulative. I don't know.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, it's a tough thing, and like the thing I struggle with in my own life, or in like I have friends who on both sides of things, because I tend to be pretty down the middle, in my beliefs, just in general, at least from my perspective. But the thing I get, I have a lot of people who are way more involved on both sides of the spectrum than me, and I'm just like, but it just doesn't interest me. Like, I'm like, I just don't care. Like, I don't feel like spending hours of my week caring about all of these, like,
things
issues
that don't affect you.
And debates, and feeling like I gotta have real, like, succinct understandings behind, like, I'm just like, it's a hard thing to admit, but I'm also like, it's a thing that comes up time and time again on the show and just in my life, but it's like, I believe that the way we as Christians affect change in those around us is through one-on-one relationship. And so that is where I'm putting my energy.
Yeah.
I also think there is value in the political system, and I will participate in it.
Yeah.
But that is not where my focus lies, nor where my hope lies.
100%. Exactly.
And so it just wears me out, the people who are super invested. But I am like, those people who are super invested, like, get stuff done in ways that are cool and in ways that I don't like.
Yeah, people
But,
that are
like,
super invested and make it so that you don't have to be, which is nice. And,
exactly.
for whatever harm or good they're doing, like, they are filling a role that you don't have to, so you can do something else. And, like, for sure, I think that the temperance and just, like, not feeling like you have to be hyper involved with every single thing and have something to say and then say it, even if it's like just the difference between Googling something or not. Like, I feel like it's so freeing to just step away from that kind of social media pressure and really just modern culture, internet culture pressure to participate in every single news story that's going on.
Yeah. It's like I don't want to be calloused towards things. No. Because that's the point of, like, Connie's thing, where she's like, I don't have any power to enact change, and so, like, I just don't care. And I'm like, I don't want that to be my perspective. But I don't, based on, like, my own selfish interests and my view of the world, I don't think that the effective use of my time in enacting change is to sink a ton of time into political advocacy. Exactly.
And all of those caveats you gave could be the case for other people.
Right.
And that's just, like, knowing yourself and, like, what is Dylan about? Right. What is he like? What is he good at?
Like, I think it is worth my time to, in the weeks leading up to an election, spend some time looking over things and have an idea of what I'm going in for and why.
Yeah.
But I don't need that to be a 52 weeks a year part of my life. I'm like, we get elections once a year. That means that for a little bit of time in the couple weeks leading up to them, I'm going to pay closer attention just so I'm not going in and checking a bunch of boxes for people whose names I don't know.
Well, and like I think, officially we do a decent job of getting our candidates out there as far as like having debates, things like that. Like I was watching because it's was it preliminaries? Primaries. Preliminaries. Same thing, actually, I think. For the Pennsylvania State Senate, and like watching that, and it's a whole different realm, and it's casual, it's on national TV, like it's short, it's like an hour long, they're talking about very real things, but it's small, and you can participate in it by just learning about it that way, in the way that it's that it's designed to, like that's what debates are for. And then you can gather all the opinions you need based on that. And guess what? For the next, 14 days, unless I hear a major scandal that's like, concretely proven, I don't think I'm going to change my mind based on, I've done the research. I've heard what they had to say.
Right. It's like everything can be researched and actually to death.
Yeah. Especially politics.
We just kind of all have to figure out where the line we draw for ourselves is. And the people who draw their line further one way might view you as irresponsible, but that's
I'm okay with
it. Right, like that's just
Yeah.
something like I have made peace with, where it's like I can only go so far down this rabbit hole because at a certain point, everyone is bad.
Well, yeah,
like
and
that's
at a certain
the thing.
point you become, and to validate Connie's point this episode, at a certain point it is beyond your control, and you do only have the 1 or 2 votes that you really need to concern yourself with, because like constantly troubling yourself with all of these major problems in other states is good. It's good to be aware. But if you're taking on those burdens of all these problems every day, it's going to inhibit your ability to affect positive change in the community in which you actually can do something about it.
Yeah, and that's why I think like the people who I really like what they're doing from an advocacy perspective in recent years are doing it at such a local level that I'm like, I admire so much, because it is like those changes affect the people immediately around you. Yeah. Whether that be, city council person or school board or whatever. That is a platform where I have more respect for, or I just that's a spot where I'm like, I feel like I actually see the fruits of labor.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Whether or not I like that labor. But, like...
there are fruits.
Right. All right.
Life gives you fruits, you make cocktails. Am I right? Am I right?
So the episode, then, when we get into the meat of it...
Yes.
We've got Horace Higginbotham. What a name.
Is it Botham or Bottom?
Botham.
Okay. It says Botham on the wiki, but I wrote Bottom in my notes.
I typed Botham before I saw the wiki.
All right.
So I'm going to assume I'm correct.
Album 3 expert.
He's running for I don't know.
Class president.
Is it class president? I was going to say student council, but class president specifically. And yeah, Whit and Tom.
Our second episode about class presidents.
Yeah, it's true. That one.
That was a good one.
Less charged. Whit and Tom are kind of talking to each other, and Whit's like, man, the kids are so interested in learning about the electoral process. And Tom's like, yeah, I don't know that that's the case. You're giving out free ice cream, Whit. And they don't, and Chris intros it by saying, like, most of the kids aren't paying attention to Horace. I'm just like, it's an interesting thing to have Whit, like, mildly wrong.
Yeah. It is. Well, and maybe I think he knows he's wrong. It seems like they're playing it that way.
Oh, you think he's maybe being somewhat comical about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be obtuse on my part. But yeah, it's this. It's a fun interaction between them.
is.
And Horace comes over after, making his speech, and he's trying to
He's a man
get
of the people.
he's trying to get Connie's endorsement.
Yeah,
which is
it's
like
hilarious.
yes, and Connie's just like, no, I'm not endorsing you, no. And I'm also like, I think it's funny that that's like the instigating moment, because I'm like, no, Connie should not endorse him.
Yeah, no.
That's weird.
Please don't. That's
like
weird.
I don't need high schooler throwing their support behind a middle schooler for an election.
But it'd be kind of epic if it happened, though. I mean, man, that playground drama must have been insane.
And then Tom says, he'd throw his endorsement in. He was listening to the speech, and it's a real barn burner, which Tom would know something about. Not at this point in the show, but give it another few years, Tom, and you'll have first-hand experience with
both
with the barn burner and an election.
Yes.
Oh man, and Connie.
That's a lot of foreshadowing. Wow.
Connie, just like me, doesn't find elections exciting.
Amen.
She's like, it's just a popularity contest. It doesn't mean anything.
It's not even a popularity contest. It's a money contest.
Well, yes, at the school level, very much a popularity contest, and a comical one at that. I think student president's always interesting because it's a popularity contest, but the most popular kid is not ever the one who gets it.
Yeah,
because
they never run.
Right, because they don't care.
Yeah.
So it's like who is nerdy enough to care, but like palatable to the general public.
Yeah,
they're going to be the one who wins.
Yeah. This is what debate kids were built for.
Oh man. But and then Connie just goes on this whole thing about how her vote doesn't really matter, how at the end of the day, the powers that be are just going to make their own decision, and what's the point in caring?
I feel that way about primaries so much. Especially presidential primaries. My dad follows politics pretty closely, but I remember growing up, like, watching the Republican candidates get dwindled down for the 2016 election, being like, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me. There's no way, right? No. Oh my Lord. Okay. And then for re-election, nobody came up to challenge him or
right.
Like
you never do. Like the incumbent always has a seat.
Exactly.
Because they won once.
Yeah.
So they're not going to lose. Or no one's going to do better, I guess. They in this case did lose, but
which was uncommon. Typically incumbents don't.
Yeah.
But anyway, and it's equally frustrating on both sides of the aisle, where it's just like, why?
Yeah.
Like, we have these primary elections, which are the most sacred part of the democracy, honestly. Like, we're choosing who's representing us.
Yeah. Have you heard about the concept of open primaries?
No. But
open primaries is everyone, regardless of party, could vote in the primary.
Okay.
And the idea is that would push towards more moderate candidates, because you have people from both sides of the aisle going, hey, this is the person from that party that most appeals to me. I have no idea if it would literally work, but it is a very interesting idea that I think about often when I think about how bad the U.S. political situation is.
No, I think that's a very reasonable, not terribly complicated step to take that would really help the electoral process to be, more authentic and representative of what the people actually want.
Yeah, it puts a mechanism in place to, like, somewhat hinder the binary choice that a presidential election is.
Yes.
Where it's like, what if it was a little less binary?
Yeah.
And that wouldn't decide, that would still be to dwindle down the candidate and the, like, the party itself still has, final decision or whatever in who they put forward.
Well, and
but
then
you get an idea of who is amicable to people at large.
Exactly. And I mean, if you get somebody that amasses a decent amount of, Republican votes that's a Democrat, and also their Democratic votes, that speaks very strongly towards potential as far as swing states and stuff like that is concerned.
Yeah, it's just interesting.
Why don't we do that again?
I don't know, Andrew, because things are the way they always have been.
Oh no!
I just we
shouldn't be basing our government off a 300-year-old document. Are you sure? Are you positive?
There's so much where I'm just it's the thing I always come back to, which is I don't think that we are as divided as
we need to be.
Well, no, as we literally are. I don't think we are as divided as we are perceived to be, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because
I think
voting in
chance,
primaries,
people would vote for someone more in the middle if they could.
Yeah. Well, and voting in primaries now, it's basically you can either vote for who you like, or you can vote for who's most likely to win.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
And
once again, that's an election. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's plenty of ways to still campaign and game and whatever and make that system break as well.
Yeah.
Because you can just have people bunch up and be like, all right, all the Republican voters are voting for this Republican candidate. All the Democratic voters are voting for this Democrat candidate. Mm-hmm. The Republican one wins, and then we've made no progress.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying hey, there's this magic switch we can flip and it fixes everything. It's just it's an interesting thought exercise.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Well, and I mean, I'm definitely the more reckless out of the two of us. So I'm more of a, break it and then repair it, rather than, wait longer to do it.
Yeah, no, that would tend to be my take on this sort of a thing as well, where it's the worst thing that happens is that nothing changes.
Yes, precisely. Precisely. And I think that that's so much of, the younger generation's frustration with the political system as it exists now.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Such a great episode that we have talked so little about.
So Wit then launches into this story about, hey, if you think that one vote doesn't matter, let me tell you the story of Jameson Shoemaker. Mm-hmm. He was a man from Indiana, and Tom's like, oh, I guess that means he's passed. And Wit's like, well, yes, he lived over 150 years ago, to which Horace says one of my favorite lines ever, if he were alive today, he'd be dead. And Connie rolls her eyes, and it's so quality.
Good. Oh, and Wit kind of laughs underneath his breath a little bit, which I thought was funny that he acknowledged that joke.
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's very well played. And so there's this. Yeah, so we start in Texas in 1845, and I think that all of these little scenes that we get throughout are incredibly well constructed.
Yeah,
all the performances are fun. The engineering's great. John Campbell's score really stands out in this episode. Mm-hmm. He loves playing around with Old West kind of stuff and gets to do a bit of that here. It's an episode that really sings from a production standpoint and just from a story standpoint. It's incredibly well plotted.
Yeah.
And so it's Sam Houston, who is the president of Texas, and he is talking with his with an advisor or something, and they're waiting for the votes to whether or not Texas has been ratified as a state. Mm-hmm. And this guy, barrels in on a horse and drops off a letter, and with the results in it, and Sam's like, you can go. You can go now and freshen up. And he's like, no, man, I'm a Texan. I want to hear this too.
Yeah.
And Sam goes out onto the balcony where a bunch of people have gathered, and he reads out the letter from the U.S. Senate saying that, like, Texas has been welcomed in as a state. And it is a very effective scene.
Yeah. It's very good.
I love it's the classic kind of Hollywood idealistic politician kind of thing.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, well, we're doing the right thing, but it's gonna be real hard to get everybody to, like, it'll take a miracle for everybody to work together to make this happen.
Yep, and then like, right,
it happens by one vote.
It happens by one vote, and this, like, and he, like, Sam Houston, like, says, like, oh, huh, I bet he's who the city of Houston's named after. Didn't think about that. But
you didn't during the
President
episode?
of Houston named Sam, or President of Texas named Sam Houston.
Yeah,
that's a thing.
Pick up on that.
But the thing he says there.
He also could be the leader of a megachurch. We're not sure.
the thing he says there, where he's like, I am reading this letter aloud to you. I did not read it beforehand and whatnot. Is once again, it's just like the idealized rah-rah politician who,
old-timey,
right,
back when democracy was still wet behind the ears in America.
Yeah, and like people were good and whatever. Yeah. I mean, it's also like it's the like the most modern version of this that I can think of in recent memory is Designated Survivor, a not super good show that aired on, I want to say, ABC for 2 seasons and then got picked up by Netflix for a third and final. The idea is Kiefer Sutherland, basically, like, everyone in the government dies,
except
and so
for him.
He is the president and he's an independent, and so like he's playing both sides of the policy, and it's this like the first like moderate president in forever, and like he has this, they give him this sort of an energy.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, you know,
I am
like, right, a man of the people. I'm going to be frank with you. Like, I'm not going to hide behind my policy and whatever. And that's the vibe they give Sam Houston. And it's like, even if this is like so idealized and not like at all a reality, it doesn't make it less effective in the same way that, like, you know, you can do with a Christmas episode or whatever. Just is like, you know, innately having, and this episode holds a lot of nostalgia for me too, just because of album 3. But
and say what you will, this episode has stuck with me throughout my life. As far as like, if I don't think my vote matters, I think of this episode being like, well, there was that one episode of Odyssey.
Yeah, no, truly, truly, and so So we come out on, there's he's reading this letter and he's like, there's a whole series of events that led us to this thing that are crazy and we can't wait to tell you about. But most importantly, this guy named, is it Harrigan?
Cast by Harrigan.
Harrigan voted for you to become a state by one vote.
Yeah.
He changed it at the last second. And so you've become a state. And Whit comes out of the story, and Horace is all excited. And Connie's like, yeah, but Harrigan's a senator. Senators have power. That doesn't mean a normal vote means anything. And, of course, Whit's like, yes, that's exactly what I want you to say. Yeah. And so he launches into the next story, which is 4 years earlier in Indiana. There's this great scene of like political bickering where this guy named Marsh is voting, or is like trying to decide on who to vote for, and he's got an angel on, well, I guess he doesn't. He's got a demon on each shoulder, and they're both telling him that these candidates are bad and the other one is good, or like their candidate's good, the other one is bad, like this whole thing. And there's this third candidate who both of them are like, no, like he's a non-factor. He's not been He's not been in politics before. And with that in mind, Marsh votes for Harrigan. When he does so, he breaks a 3-way tie,
which is insane.
Which then gives him the one vote, like makes his one vote be the reason that Harrigan gets elected.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah.
And do we cut out of the story and back to
Yeah, we
Wit
do.
again?
We do
Okay.
cut out of the story because they're once again just kind of like, at this point, Connie's kind of turning, and she's like, but you haven't even mentioned Shoemaker yet. You said
Yeah.
this was about him. And Wit then jumps in again. And I really like the backwards narrative of this
It's
story.
so good.
Like, Lawler structures it very, very well.
Yeah.
By saying it's a story about Jameson Shoemaker, but then starting with Texas becoming a state, going back to Marsh voting for Harrigan, and then jumping back to 1837. And we have Jameson Shoemaker out plowing his field. It's a Will Ryan character. He's singing. It's great.
Yeah.
There's,
Singing like a cowboy in like in the fields, essentially.
yeah,
He's
exactly.
making a lot. There's a lot of cowboy sounds between him and Walker Edmiston.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeehaw!
And then, right, Walker Edmondson as Richard Reynolds is a stellar performance.
Top notch.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
And he rides in and is just talking about like, oh man, like, you know, I always get rowdy on election day. And Jameson's like, yeah, you getting in some early celebrating.
I would like to make one note. Jameson Shoemaker does accuse Walker Edmiston of screaming like a savage, which,
Yeah,
given the
yes.
time period, I was like,
Right.
oh.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
No, that was that. I also
Ruh-roh.
I didn't write it down, but that did hit my ear, and I went, ah.
No. That's some old milk right there.
And so yeah, he goes on. He goes on to talk about like just being
Excited about it.
yeah
and
excited
then,
about the election. And Shoemaker's like, well,
I've been
that's-
working all day. I forgot to vote.
yeah, he realizes, oh wait, the election's today, not tomorrow, and here I am plowing my field, and so he rides into town. And once again, I like the like Old West camaraderie, whatever. Reynolds being like him saying to Reynolds, like his neighbor, like, hey, can you like put my plow away and whatever? I gotta get to town.
Yeah, I gotta
Just
grab
like
my
that
horse
inherent
and high
trust
step it.
of,
Yeah.
like, this is a guy who I was like annoyed with when he showed up.
But we
but,
also
like-
like trade onions for medicine. So.
Right, exactly. He's just good neighbor. And so he rides in where we just have a comedic pairing of people working at the voting booth.
Yeah. It's quite the scene where there's the one guy that, wants to close early and the other guy is a stickler for the rules, and it's
Yep.
It's 4:55
But that
and
would
they
be
close it.
breaking
Fuck
the rules.
Which I think law would be like an accurate term, right?
Yeah, you think law might be better there? I don't know.
That would be. I mean, I understand. It's a kids show, and that definitely conveys the idea just as well. But I'm unsure, given the history of the country, whether voting laws, rules, like what would the term be if they weren't in the union?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, no, this is
Principles?
in the union. This is in
yes.
Indiana.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fun.
He's counted. One of them's counted all the ballots.
Yep.
Comes in, all the ballots are gone, so he's got to write one in. Well, can you write? Yes, I can.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you write?
Yeah.
Like, these line reads are
Yeah, and then he
written
finished-
on my soul.
And then he finishes it, and he hands it right to the guy, and he's like, "You've got to put it in the box. It's the rules."
Yep. So he puts it in, and then he immediately takes it out.
Yeah.
And they add the vote in, and Shoemaker's like, who won?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which also, I would like to point out that them having already tallied the vote is problematic in that they now know who Shoemaker voted for. Like,
Yeah, that is illegal, isn't it?
Correct. Like, they wind up, like, he tells them, they do, like, kind of the, like, whatever it is, like, what's like the thing nurses and doctors aren't allowed, like where they're not allowed to talk to people about
Confidentiality,
where like they don't acknowledge that they know until he tells them, but
Yeah.
it is still, I'm like, you know,
Doctor, I think I might have bipolar. I agree.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to say anything, but yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Or right. And yeah, it's just it's funny. And so he goes he says, "Who won?" And they're like, "Well, I guess we don't have to tell anybody else first." So it was Marsh. And he's like, Marsh, that's who I voted for, and starts to like celebrate. And they say, he's going to be happy when, not as happy as he'll be when he hears about that it was you who voted for him. And he's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "He won by one vote." He's like, "Oh man," like you feel Shoemaker have like the gravity of that decision. And he's just like, "I hope I made the right choice." And the line that said is, "History will tell. It surely will."
Which is good.
It's good line, and it's one that has stuck with me. Like I feel like I have used that line or variations of that line in my own life in a more joking manner.
Definitely.
But like that's just one of those things that has stuck with me.
But it definitely has its roots in this episode, for sure.
Yeah, and so we jump out, and Witt summarizes. Shoemaker voted for Marsh, who won by one vote. Marsh voted for Harrigan, who won by one vote. And Harrigan voted for Texas statehood, which won by one vote. So one man with one single vote was directly responsible for Texas becoming a state.
Go Pokemon, go to the polls.
But it's it's like it's hard not to be like romantic about that sort of a story.
Exactly. No, 100%.
And like you said,
it's
one that
effective.
sticks.
It stuck with me, and like of all the things in the world to be proud about doing, I think participating in democracy is like one of the better things, and like not that it's perfect,
and especially
or anything, but
because this episode portrays it in such a pure view, where it's like you participate by voting, and we all get one, and we are all equal in that. As opposed
even though this
to
was
like
in like the late 1800s, where it was only white people that owned property. But no slaves, no women, no
right. But also because like so you not only have that piece, but like it's the now like you can't be romantic in the same way, because it's like elections are won by like marketing and campaigning, not by voting, in the same way. And who's to say they ever were? But the reality that Odyssey is portraying here is this guy voted not because he was somebody of high stature, not because he had a lot of money, but he was just a random guy plowing his fields,
doing his job, and
he
it was
made a
voting
vote. And that's
the kind of energy I want to bring to the whole place.
Yeah, and it's just like, right, it's like it's impossible. Like it's such an idealized version of the reality that it's like, oh, this story is beautiful and effective. And I think it becomes a good fable for that reason, even if it is not like, but it's a good fable about why you should vote.
Yeah.
Even if it's not reflective of the actual reality of how elections are won.
Yeah, well, and as you said, like, the Democratic, like, election process in America has gotten so complicated as far as, like, gerrymandering and district lines and where all of that's being done. And obviously lobbying's a huge thing. But, there are so many extra filters that get talked about, that get put on top of the electoral process in America now, that, like, in the 80s, Wit talking about a story from, 150 years ago, like, it just is so sweet and simple, and it is, like, it makes sense that people were willing to die just to be able to do that,
Yeah.
because it's, like, so important.
Yeah. And then we get into Wit's whole kind of landing the plane here on, in addition to this being an episode about voting, we got to talk about Wit's, like, whole nothing is coincidental, which is something that we've cited often in this show.
Yep.
But Connie says, things like that just don't happen all the time. And Wit's like, right, which is why this wasn't a coincidence. Nothing in nothing in that story happened by chance. It was all men making decisions and whatever. And I'm like, yes. However, I would say it is chance to an extent that Reynolds that in your telling that Reynolds reminded Shoemaker of the poll and whatever. But sure, like nothing happened by chance. They all chose to vote, which I think, once again, good messaging. Yeah. Like you are making a choice. You have that amount of say, use it. And then he goes into his, I don't believe that anything is coincidental. I believe that things are providential, that everything is God ordained, that he is the reason that this happened. And when Connie's kind of like, yeah, but it happened in such a dramatic way. He's like, there's no rule saying God can't be dramatic.
Amen.
Which is very funny.
He did flood the entire world. That feels a bit dramatic.
God,
and then he
bit
killed
of a drama
his son. God is a drama queen. That's my favorite. My favorite gender.
Can you get that on a t-shirt, Andrew? I feel like God you rock that t-shirt.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we can make that. Personal. It'll be when the Chalk Pod ends, Dylan will make another podcast and I'll start a clothing brand. It's a tale as old as time.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe check the links in the description, folks. Maybe there's a God is a Drama Queen t-shirt for you to buy.
Please, Michaela.
Or Dylan. I can do stuff too, Andrew.
That's true.
Every once in a while.
I would love it.
I go hard. So we'll see what happens.
You do go hard.
But it's just this thing of Wits where he's like, all of this happened because of God. And I'm like, I agree in that all of everything happens because of God. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah,
Earth exists.
Right. Or like, yeah, if he hadn't voted, that's also God.
Yes.
Or if he had voted a different way, also God. Like it's that like, everything you get into, you can say that from a high level. I feel like I can say that with a high level from confidence without feeling like I'm stepping into the free will discussion, which is way harder to reckon with, and something that I continue to struggle with and disagree with people about and whatever. But like just that basic idea of like things don't happen outside of what God wants for the world.
Interesting. Yeah, no, certainly. Well, and he is ultimately in control and over all of it. And so, like, at the very least, he is looking down and bearing witness to his creation making these things happen. You know, and so that is in the certain sense, I feel like that's an amount of endorsement.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And then Connie kind of starts to walk away and then turns back, and in another just like line to end an episode to just make Wit so freaking
hard.
exciting.
So hard.
She says, "It amazes me that you can take any subject and relate it to God or the Bible."
Yeah, Connie?
And the truth is, and what amazes me more is that I'm starting to fall for it or whatever.
Yeah, she says, like, I'm starting to not mind it as much or something like that.
Yeah,
like,
that's
it's starting to not think it's so bad.
Yeah.
Like,
And
oh.
we're building, guys. It's like this
A
art
sweet,
has
sweet hit of beginning conversion where they're like, maybe God. And you're just like, oh my God, yeah, okay, this is going to get me for the next couple months. This is going to hold me over. There's going to be a couple awkward Thursday night texts, maybe a Sunday morning invitation to church.
Oh man, but yeah, it is an effective episode of Odyssey. I think it accomplishes what it's setting out to do, and I think that like against some of our other stuff that we've talked about, I don't think what it's setting to do is nefarious. I think that this episode in a silo is not doing harm. And I think that the things I internalized from this episode are good. Were good things
Yeah, I
to
don't think
internalize. I think that you couple this with a lot of other stuff that we know about Focus on the Family. You couple this with other stuff that Odyssey does both before and after this, and it starts to get way more icky. But I think that the basic idea of you matter, participate, don't just assume, like, don't just go on going, I can't affect the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, with the population being what it is, there's no, it's getting harder and harder to believe that any one person can do something particularly impactful, especially during, an electoral process. But this story is really beautifully structured and conveyed in the way that it starts with the biggest, most significant thing in history happening as far as, like, Texas becoming a state, and then it works backwards from there to explain that, like, this thing that you would read about in history books is important, but it's important because of these three smaller stories that nobody's going to hear about where, democracy was so crucial to, pushing these events forward, which eventually led to this big final one. You said it earlier. I mean, I don't think he needed to go this hard. Like, he could have flipped it around and it would have been fine, but, like, the fact that he starts that way, I just watched an episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender that did something very similar to that, where, it started with a very big suspenseful thing, and then it cuts to, like, 3 days earlier. And,
like the classic in media res beginning to a story.
Yeah.
And, or your Seinfeld's backwards episodes or whatever. Like, you have, there are plenty of other examples of people deploying this sort of a thing well. And I just, I really like the way it structured it. I hate that I'm like, this Phil Lawler episode is so good, incredibly well, like, written.
It's really well done.
Because that's usually what I like to call him on.
Yeah.
But, it's okay.
Well, I mean,
like,
we can nitpick a little bit, but it's not worth it. Just give the
right,
man props.
Right, and it's also like,
it's Sunday. We'll give him the day off.
We also, like, we can respect how a person did something in a moment that's not necessarily without endorsing that person as a whole.
Respect the pouch.
Yeah.
Respect it.
Okay. You ready for
history please.
Corner with Dylan?
Yes.
So we've got kind of context corner, which will then bleed into history corner.
Okay.
But so, as you are well aware, Adventures in Odyssey has published 3 books detailing that are encyclopedias about Odyssey.
Yes.
There's the 1997 complete guide, the 2008 official guide, and the 2012 revised official guide.
Okay.
I own all of these, thanks in part to Johnny Youngblood, who provided the 2012 edition.
God bless.
And they all have something to say about this episode.
Are they all different?
They're all different.
What?
So we're going to get into it. So in 1997, this is Phil Lawler writing. We got the story from a Focus on the Family broadcast. In an effort to encourage listeners to vote, Dr. Dobson relayed the basic facts that I used in the story about each election being decided by just one vote. I filled in the details, fictionalizing some, but not all, of the characters in the episode. The basic facts have since been confirmed by other sources, such as Ann Lander's newspaper column, which is a weird call-out.
Yeah?
But so
I guess
I
in
think
the
it's
80s
I
that
think
was
it's
pretty
interesting.
hardcore.
This was Phil Lawler adapting like a James Dobson like message.
Yeah, pretty much.
About this, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like my hunch would be that Dobson was told linearly,
Mm-hmm.
and that Phil flipped it, but I couldn't track down the original Dobson one because I was kind of curious. But no good. Random radio broadcasts from the 80s, not particularly easy to find. So the 2008 official guide then says this. This is Hubler writing then, because he does the 2008 and 2012. An unusual story inspired us to write about how one vote made the difference in the statehood of Texas. The section of the story about one senator changing his vote and making Texas a state is completely true. The rest of the story, however, is fiction.
No!
And then, 2012. Unfortunately, when researching the first edition of the official guide, we found several authoritative articles that debunked the one vote stories, so we noted that much of the episode was fiction in the guide. Upon reading that sentence in the book, a determined fan named Lizzie Goldsmith was curious if any of the pieces of the episode might be true after all. She researched articles going all the way back to the Journal of the State of Indiana in 1842, and we can now say with full confidence that the basic story in the episode is true, though a few of the names and minor details were changed.
Wait.
So, Lawler based this off of a broadcast without really corroborating any evidence.
Yeah, that's fine.
The internet debunked this.
Yes.
Then a fan of the show
Debunk the internet.
dug into it and was able to prove that it actually was true. So this is actually I'll link to a CGP Grey, who is makes educational videos on YouTube for years now. Not with this specific issue, but has gotten into this whole thing, like fallen down this rabbit hole a lot, which is like how unknowable parts of history are. Yeah. In ways that like you would find incredibly surprising.
Yeah.
There's a really good one, a really good video he made, like deeply digging into this when he was researching the origin of the name Tiffany, which feels like it should be straightforward, but took a ton of research and still wasn't 100% clear.
Okay.
So this sort of thing is not that surprising.
Okay.
But
there was just a
diversity
of opinions over a long period of time
Correct.
as to what actually happened.
Correct. But
January 6th?
I jeez, man.
Sorry.
But I managed to, because she's named by name, get in contact with Lizzie Goldsmith.
Really?
Yeah.
Dylan?
I know.
You shouldn't have.
Absolutely. So I hit her up and we exchanged some stuff back and forth, and she was able to provide the like paper with sources that she wrote in 2011.
Wow. Is
that
this
she
like a
then
high
sent
school level
to-
paper or college level? Is there a
it's-
professor on there?
No, it's not like an officially structured paper or
Okay.
whatever. But she was at one point an intern for Adventures in Odyssey.
Yeah.
As part of Focus on the Family.
Wow.
And so had contacts there and ended up emailing this off to Nathan Hubler. And so, yeah, this is, so her initial source, there is a book called The Greatest Stories Never Told, which had this story in it, though slightly different. It talks about in 1842, Henry Shoemaker
Oh.
was, working on a farm, and he rode in and cast his ballot, and Madison Marsh won by 1 vote. Mm-hmm. Then Marsh votes for Edward Hannigan.
Okay, not Harrigan.
Who wins by 1 vote.
Okay.
And interestingly, the story that this has, in addition to the other one, is that in 1846, the U.S. Senate was not sure whether or not to declare war on Mexico.
Oh.
And Hannigan voted in favor of war. Oof. Which is the point at which California became part of the U.S.
Interesting.
And Hannigan also voted for Texas statehold. So this one person, Henry Shoemaker, is responsible for both California and Texas becoming a state, and also a war.
Wow.
So that is the thing. This is what she found in what Lizzie found in a book. She then went into the places that were cited from that book and found more and better detail. Mm-hmm. So the reason that we even know Henry Shoemaker's name, or Shoemaker, who knows? The reason we know his name is that his vote was a contested ballot.
Oh, okay.
Because you don't know the name of people who voted.
Yeah.
So it's like, why is this person who becomes Jameson, but is Henry in reality, why is his name there? And it was unlike the episode in which he there's no ballot and he has to write one, there was no ballot that had all of the candidates that he wanted to vote for. So he cut names off 4 different ballots with a knife and pasted them together to cast his vote.
Okay.
And the inspector there just tossed out that ticket. And then, because things were in a tie, there was a long proceeding with testimony and hearings and whatever, and that broke, and his vote was allowed, and that broke the tie. So that is how we have his name on record.
That's crazy, because he, did a serial killer letter in the form of a vote.
yeah, I love it. And so,
good for him.
Based on then further digging back, we find out that Marsh then voted for Howard, and then Howard dropped out. And so then he voted for Hannigan, which is what gave Hannigan the lead. But there's a really interesting piece here. I'm trying to find it. This is a lengthy article. I'm gonna check with Lizzie again and see. I might be able to link this in the description.
That would be wonderful.
Don't know if
she deserves her work to be read if she does. Yeah. Feel comfortable sharing it.
So this is from the Journal of the Senate. But there was 150 people voting, so 76 was needed to get the win. So after Howard was dropped, Hannigan got 76. The second highest voter was Oliver Smith, who got 69.
Nice.
So Hannigan got elected by 1 vote, but he didn't beat the other candidate by 1 vote.
Okay.
And that's the one that is in the Odyssey episode, a 3-way split.
Yeah.
Which is just fully fabricated. Like, there's not a basis for that.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure it's Dobson re-airing an anecdote that he heard. Like, this is just one of the, this is like a classic folk tale that's just going to get told over and over again because it drives home a very specific point. And so it makes sense that, it can also be debunked because it's like names change and all this stuff, but I'm like, I appreciate the work that Lizzie did to actually see, okay, can we find primary sources for this stuff?
Well, especially if, it's governmental in nature, there should be records of it,
So the last piece then is Texas statehold. Texas statehood. Texas, or the one vote, so the vote for Texas to become a state was tied 26-26.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Henry Johnson of Louisiana changed his vote, allowing it to pass 27-25. So one vote.
Okay.
But Hannigan, so the vote that got Texas to become a state was Henry Johnson, not Hannigan. But Hannigan did vote for Texas to become a state. Even if he wasn't the one who changed, if he hadn't voted that way, it wouldn't have. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, we're tied 26-26. He's already in the 26 on favor. Someone else changes their vote, but his vote has the same effect as that person's.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the tale of a single vote from history, is that we had Henry Shoemaker vote for Madison Marsh.
Yeah.
Madison Marsh vote for Hannigan.
Yeah.
And Hannigan vote for Texas statehood. And all of those races, though, were close enough that one vote counted. The first one especially, the second one in that it put him over the majority, and the third one in that it was one of the 27 votes that made the thing happen.
Interesting.
Versus the 25 that didn't. So it is a true-ish story of history. I think it is true enough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
Like,
I don't think
it totally crosses that. Like, they took some artistic liberties, and they didn't do it knowingly, which I think is funny. But they took some artistic liberties to get to this point, but they still stuck the landing.
Yeah, no, they definitely, based on the information you've given me, they've definitely played around with it a little bit, and the template which they had to work from, which was not entirely doesn't translate the best to an Adventures in Odyssey episode or really anything like that. They did a very good job, and like we said, it's a good episode, and it's interesting. It's pseudo history. It's big fan.
Yeah, I think because I don't know if you had this, but like I also had, prior to covering this episode, spent some time Googling trying to figure out if this was real.
No.
Because I, like, years ago.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those stories that's just always stuck with me, and it seems too good to be true. And so I, like, spent some time Googling and could never, like, really prove that it was. And so I was also just under the, it's a fable, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's still effective, but it's weird that the show portrays it as truth. Mm-hmm. And that was always a bit of a tension I had. And so it was interesting in reading the official guides, complete guides, official guides, in kind of the run-up to this, where I was like, oh, it's actually like gone back and forth a couple times. And I was like,
there's like,
it's so interesting that that Hubler's got this note that's like someone reached out and like had done all the research going back to like Journal of the State of Indiana, but also
they better have gotten an A on that homeschool assignment.
What's
That's
the
all
other?
I'm saying.
The other piece was like Texas State Library Archives and Commission, like a bunch of genuine, like official, like
government
legal
records.
documentation, right? To actually pull this together, and I was like, that's super cool. I would love to read that, and Lizzie was very nice to send that my way.
God bless.
So thank you, Lizzie Goldsmith.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Yeah, really appreciate.
Did you tell her about the podcast?
I mean, I told her that's why I was doing this.
Okay.
But,
all right. Well, if you're listening, love you. You're the greatest.
Yeah. I'll send this episode her way when it comes out, because I really appreciate it. That is the level of research that I want for covering a history episode, but research I could never actually accomplish on my own.
For sure.
Because it would take so much time and effort. And so
the frustrating thing for me when it comes to academic research is I feel like you spend just as long trying to find the place that's going to have the resources that you're looking for as you do like looking in that place for said resources and gathering them.
No,
like,
that is fair. Yeah. It's good stuff though.
Any final thoughts or plugs?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm gonna plug registering to vote.
Yes.
As
Top notch. Yep.
I mean, I was gonna say as it's an election year. It's always an election year, guys. Every election matters.
It's true. It does.
And so yeah, if you're not registered to vote, and you legally can do so, please do.
Know where your voting place is. You know. Me and Dylan are very blessed to have a wealth of options around us. But yeah, just know where you gotta go and know that you got your stuff ready. So, you know, when the day comes, you can go out and participate.
Yeah. And
don't let the mean people on your phone that text you from strange numbers scare you away from actually voting.
Amen. And yeah, thank you all for listening.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're
real sweet.
We appreciate it. And next week, we're going to be back with episode 49. Thank you, God. That's not me saying thank you, God. That is the name of the episode.
Wow. Is it going to be Connie saying it?
I don't know. History will tell. It surely will.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
WadFam Chalk Pod is a presentation of the Lidditz Podcast Co-op. This show is a fan podcast and has no official affiliation with Adventures in Odyssey or Focus on the Family. As such, the copyright is ours under Creative Commons. Follow the podcast at WadFamChalkPod on Twitter and Instagram, or email us at wadfamchalkpod@gmail.com. A Single Vote was hosted by Dylan Weaver and Andrew Acebo, and edited by Dylan Weaver. And I'm Nathan Haverstead, hoping you'll join us again next time for more of the WadFam Chalk Pod.